Hey everybody, Tony D with a screenwriting tip video. Haven't done one in a while, but I thought I'd talk about. Ooh, what's the deal with my beard here? This way. Okay, there we go. I thought I'd talk about villains and bad characters because I got a lot of flack for saying that you need to have a protagonist that's likable, basically. There was a movie called I Care a Lot where I looked over the trailer and basically came to the conclusion that the character was not likable enough according to the information I got in that trailer. It's because the character rips off old people, takes their homes, puts them in a nursing home, and then spends the money on herself and laughs about it. So she then gets, attacked by gangsters for some reason. I forget the exact reasons. Because one of the women she scams is friends with these gangsters, or, maybe it's his mother or whatever. So I'm not really rooting for her, and that's a real problem. It's a real problem because there are ways, and what I suggested in that movie is the way you can make her more likable is to make the old people she scams very, very unlikable, so they deserve it, right? So if you made them racist and they're terrible to their pets and their family, then yeah, it'd be fine. Then people would be like, oh yeah, I'm on board with this because she's only scamming bad people. And then I got to thinking, well, what other movies have horrible characters in them that justify, why you like them or why you root for them? So the first one that came to mind were the main characters in Natural Born Killers. If you haven't seen that, it's I believe the screenplay is by Quentin Tarantino. I think it's directed by Oliver Stone, and it stars Woody Harrelson and Juliette Lewis as star-crossed lovers who become media sensations, and they're kind of like Bonnie and Clyde crossing the United States. They're killing people along the way, and they become media celebrities for it. And there's going to be some spoilers, so if you're going to watch the movie, what can I tell you? I have to make my point. But the reason those characters are very likable is because, first off, they're in love. Aww. And second off, Juliette Lewis, the first person they kill, I believe, is Juliette Lewis's father or drunken uncle or something, and he's molesting her. And so I think Woody kills him, and that's what starts their spree or whatever. Someone's molesting her. And a lot of the people they kill, if not all of them, are scumbags. Like everybody in the movie is basically a scumbag. And they're, again, it's sort of the film noir rule. They're kind of the nicest characters in the movie. And in the end, well, they sort of, again, I'm spoiling it for you, but they, eventually just give up their media hype life and become anonymous parents to two kids and have a very suburban life, and they're very nice. And the movie's basically saying that, there are two sides of humanity, I guess you would say. But you're rooting for them to escape because they are the nicest people in the movie, even though they murder people. Now, if you saw a bunch of people being murdered on the news by a young couple, you wouldn't root for them in real life. It's movie logic. And people conflate real life with movie logic. I mean, they continually do that in my review of the American Skin trailer. Man, people will not stop doing the same damn thing. They conflate the real issue of police brutality with the movie, portraying it in my feeling is in sort of an exaggerated way. And my point in the trailer, analyzing that trailer, was it's revenge, it's not really justice, and they're trying to portray it as justice, and I don't think it is. So people got on me for that. But everybody's entitled to their opinion, right? So, but they conflate. People took it very personal because they conflate what happens in the movie with real life, and not that they think the movie's real, but they say, oh no, this happens in real life. But the movie's not real life. The movie's not real life. And when you're crafting a story, if you don't craft it correctly, you lose the audience, or at least some of it. Now, people who have been a part of injustice and the cops have done horrible things to them, okay, yeah, they're going to identify with a movie in which the cops are very bad and get their comeuppance at the end. But that is not everyone. That is not most people. And so when you're crafting a movie, you're trying to bring the story to most people, to allow them to understand it. And if you don't portray the injustice correctly, then you're just, you're sort of blowing it, in my view. Or you go the other way with it. If you're being very cartoonishly evil, and you have a character who's going to get revenge on a bunch of people, like when some veteran comes home and then has to fight the mafia in his local town in order to win back the girl or whatever. That's enjoyable because it's a cartoon. It's not real. People don't really do that in the real world. And if they did, we wouldn't treat them as heroes. We would treat them as, oh my God, that guy killed like 20 people and now he's going to jail. Good riddance. You wouldn't hail that person as a hero because they killed 20 people. You'd be afraid of them. So when you're crafting a character who is bad, in the sense that he or she is not a good person, they still have to have likable traits in order for you to root for them. If they're just relentlessly unlikable and terrible, then no one roots for them and no one cares what happens to them, and therefore doesn't care what happens in your movie. It just frustrates people. So you have to have likable traits. Now, the easiest thing, what do? Well, they give the character a dog. That is like the classic screenwriter trick. You take a bad guy he's just a horrible person. He's a loan shark and a philanderer, and he beats up people and takes their money, or maybe he's a hitman for the mob. Oh, but he's got a dog, so I like him because I like dogs, right? That's kind of the attitude. But really, the easiest way is to make him the most likable character in that world. So like Deadpool's like that, right? Everybody in Deadpool, at least initially, is sort of a scumbag. He's a mercenary. He hangs out at a bar with a bunch of scummy guys. I think his girlfriend's a prostitute, and but eventually you kind of like Deadpool. You kind of like Wade because he has a code. He is a nice guy. He doesn't kill anybody who doesn't deserve it. And he's fun and he's funny. And you get the impression that he doesn't really want to do what he does. He's not trying to be mean. He's stuck in that world. He sort of grew up in it and he's stuck in it. He also has cancer, and then his mutant powers give him the ability to offset the cancer or whatever. The most cartoonish example would be Despicable Me. The main character in Despicable Me, he's a supervillain. He's supposed to be an evil guy, but he's actually kind of a nice guy. He's got a bunch of minions, and he treats them as his friends, and he treats them fairly well, even though he yells at them. He eventually becomes a single dad, and he treats his family nice. Deep down, he's a nice guy, even though he's evil. The problem with some filmmakers is they forget that even when you're doing an evil guy, you have to give them some qualities that you like. Even Hannibal Lecter had likable qualities. He was a sophisticated guy. He was polite and debonair and charming, and he wouldn't kill Clarice. He would consider that rude. And he was, despite the fact he was a serial killer, he was also an artist in his own way, right? He was a gourmet chef about it, and he didn't just kill the person. I was watching, someone had a clip of Hannibal, I guess the TV series, where Eddie Izzard plays one of his victims, and he cuts off his leg, cooks it, and then serves it to him as his last meal. And everything's very nice and orderly and very polite and urbane. I mean, he's still a terrible character, but you can kind of enjoy him as a character because he has nice qualities about him. It's almost impossible to enjoy a character that has no nice qualities. You gotta have some nice qualities. You can't just be a whiny, frustrating, horrible person that does horrible things and expect the audience to get behind them. You can be a criminal. There's plenty of likable criminals, all kinds of likable criminals. So a likable criminal would be Joe Pesci in the Lethal Weapon movies, right? Where he ended up playing like the third wheel to, Mel Gibson and Danny Glover. But then an unlikable criminal would be Joe Pesci in Casino, where he plays an absolute psychopath. Now, those guys were based on real gangsters. They actually murdered people for their cars and whatever money they had on them, believe it or not. And then they would bury them in a cornfield. And then in Casino, and this is true, this actually happened, they killed the two brothers and buried them in the same cornfield. Because even the mafia couldn't tolerate their abominable, murderous antics after a while. They were just completely out of control. It's a little different when you're portraying a real person, because you sort of have to follow these. They don't always follow it exactly, but they tend to follow the storyline that actually happened. So when you got Charlize Theron playing that female serial killer, oh, what the heck was the name of that movie? I already forgot. But they made her. I wouldn't say they made her likable, but they tried to give her, a softer side so you could tolerate her through the movie. If you just made her relentlessly evil and murderous, I don't think you would have watched the movie. I don't think she would have won an Oscar. They made her human. And I guess that's what you really have to do. You have to make these characters human, and you have to kind of like them a little bit. Somebody mentioned in the comments section Nightcrawler, starring, I was going to say Jared Leto, but it's not Jared Leto, it's Jake Gyllenhaal. Ugh. And it's a great movie, I saw that. And the Nightcrawler character is a bad person, but he did have nice qualities. Whether or not, whether or not his nice qualities outweighed his bad ones, that's up for debate. But he had at least some nice qualities, and you felt bad for him because he seemed earnest enough, at least when it started. When the movie starts, he's trying to be a part of something, and he's kind of a lost soul. But it's not totally his fault. He gets all twisted up. I mean, part of it is that lifestyle does that to him. Pursuing the footage at any cost actually hurts him. And he is mentally ill, I think, in that movie. He's just like a creepy guy. He's got something wrong with him. So that somewhat mitigates how he, is portrayed in the movie, as opposed to, say, the character in I Care a Lot. Just unfortunately, she, at least in the trailer, had no redeeming qualities that I saw. She just was stealing money from old people, laughing at them behind their back, and then a bunch of gangsters attack her because she attacks the wrong person. Okay. As I don't see the redeeming qualities in that. Sue me. So you want something about them that, if they're the main character, if that's what the movie's about, this bad person, you want to give them something. Give them a family, give them a reason why they're bad. It's not always their fault. There's usually some mitigating factor, and that's what makes villains or bad guys kind of interesting, right? So, a mafia character who really didn't want to get in the mob but got into it because of their, his family ties, or, like Michael from The Godfather. Like, Michael wasn't in the family business, but he gets sucked into it because he needs to save his father. He needs to save the family, and he loves his family. So it's not that he wanted a life of crime, but he's pulled into it because he sees no other choice. And then, of course, it corrupts him. In that second movie is amazing. Both movies are amazing. We won't talk about the third. So yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of levels, and I'm not saying you can't have a bad character as your main character, but they have to be likable. The audience has to have something to hang their hat on, or they just won't follow the movie. They just won't follow it. They'll just go, why am I wasting my time here? They'll feel like they're wasting their time. So there has to be some redeeming quality of the character that people go, oh, I want to see what happens to this guy, even though maybe he's not a great person, or I wouldn't, invite him into my home in real life. But you need something for the audience to hang their hat on. Anyhow, that's my screenwriting tip of the day. Hope it was useful.